Hello and thank you for joining me here today. Today I'm going to share my process for making this layout. I made the layout for Mystical Scrapbooks September challenge. The challenge is favourite books, and my layout is based on the book Little Women, which is about family, and my layout is a photo of my sister. So the other thing for the layout is to use some paint. So I've used paint in a couple of different ways on this layout. So the first way I'm going to use it is by putting it through a stencil. So I'm using this Craft stencil called Script, and I'm going to cover the whole background of my layout with this. I'm using Craft paint as well. This one's called Pale Beige. So to apply that colour to my background, which is white cardstock, I'm just going to use a sponge and I'm going to dab that through the stencil, and that will give me a bit of texture to the paint as well. I know where my photo and stuff is going to go, so I don't completely cover the background, just where I need to. Also, a little tip, if you are using acrylic paint through your stencils, you need to wash that off before it dries, because once it dries it requires scraping to get it off. So I'll set that aside to dry. One of the good things also about using acrylic paint is once it's dry it's permanent, so you can layer over the top. So I'm going to use a rust coloured acrylic paint now to paint over certain areas, and I'm watering that down. I just want like a thin coat of this rusty colour, although in the end it doesn't turn out to be that thin, but I'm going to paint this behind where my photo is going to go, so a bit of it will poke out around my photo and my pattern papers and other embellishments. And then I'm also going to use the same colour to add some splatters to the background. I'm going to use this sheet of Craft Marrakesh plain cardstock to frame my layout. I'm going to trim it down to the full 12 by 12 and then cut the centre out, just leaving a 1-inch frame. That gives me the centre section to use elsewhere on my layout, and in this particular case I'm going to use it to match my photo. I decided I wanted a bit of a interest around that frame, so I'm going to tear all of the edges of my white sheet. Then I'm going to use my art glitter glue to attach my background to my frame. I'm going to run just a bead of glue all around the inside of the frame, and that gives me a nice solid fix to the background. I'm going to work on my photo now. I have used an emery board and filed around the photo. The photo is 6 inches by 4 inches, and I'm going to cut my mat so that it's 6 1/4 by 4 1/4. This gives me 1/8 of an inch all the way around my frame, my photo I mean. I am not a big fan of big mats. I just like a small border around the photo just to distinguish it from the background. Sometimes I'll double mat and then I'll go for a bigger mat, but basically, generally, it will just be 1/4 of an inch longer and 1/4 of an inch wider than my photo. I'm going to use liquid glue to attach the photo to the mat. Usually I use double-sided tape for that because I don't want to run the risk of the liquid glue buckling the photo, but I find with art glitter glue I don't really have to worry about that. It doesn't seem to buckle anything. As usual, I have inked around the photo mat as well. I ink around probably 95% of everything that I do on my layouts. The papers I'm using for this layout are 49 and Market from their Curator's Botanical paper range. This particular sheet is Botanical Flutterology, and I'm cutting 3 strips. All 3 strips are 2 inches wide, and I'm going to tear all of the edges of those strips. So I'll tear the 2 longest edges and one of the short edges to start with, and then once I decide how long I want those strips to be, because they'll be varying lengths, I will then tear the last edge. I took my background sheet to my sewing machine and stitched right around the edge and also randomly onto the background. Time now to work out where and how long I want those pattern paper strips to be. So to do that, I'm basically laying out my page. I layer the papers how I want them, tear the edges of the edges that are straight, then ink around the whole thing. Then I'll use my lead pencil and just mark the rough placement of those pattern papers, because I want to do a bit of stamping in the background as well. So for the stamping, I'm going to use my Uniquely Creative Floral Text stamp and VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I'm not going to use a block for this because I'm not looking for a solid image. I don't want a squared off look, so I'm just going to bend the stamp and stamp it where I think I want it. Now it's just going to be random so that it just peeks out behind the photo and the pattern papers. I'm going to use my liquid glue once again to attach my pattern papers and my photo to the layout. Before I attach the photo though, I am going to add some scrap cardboard to the back of it so that it sits up a little bit from the background. To embellish my layout, I'm going to use the ephemera bits that come with this paper range. I've hunted through them and found a couple of pieces that I'm going to use, and I'm going to ink around the edge of those and then attach them to my layout. I've chosen 2 floral images and a ticket to go as the base, and they will sort of tuck under the photo. And then the fussy cuts in the pack have a white border around them, and I'm not a fan of the white border, so I've trimmed them all down so that the white border is completely gone, inked around the edge of them, and now I'll attach them to my page. One is a cluster of leaves, and I've also chosen 2 butterflies. I think one of the butterflies, the orange one, I think might be a moth, but anyway, I've chosen those and I'm going to attach those to the layout as well. I'm only going to attach the butterfly body so that the wings can lift up. For the title for my page, all I'm going to put on there is her name, so Deborah, and I have used my Kaisercraft DD700 alphabet uppercase die to cut those letters from black cardstock. Now I'm going to use my T-ruler, my reverse tweezers and my art glitter glue to add them underneath the photo. Hopefully I'll get it straight. So now I'm going to add a coat of glossy accents to the butterfly bodies and the title, and that will complete my layout for today. In the description box below I will put links to the challenge and also to the products that I've used if you're interested in checking those out. I'll also put a link to a playlist that shows my other scrapbooking videos if you would like to have a look at those. I would love it if you would give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel or leave me a comment, and I hope you can join me for my next video. Thank you.